Hello and welcome. My name is Allison Dawson and I am the Student Development Specialist, English and Writing Tutor for ECTC's TRIO Student Support Services program. I hope that all of you are doing well. Today I will be giving a brief virtual presentation titled Back to the Basics, Proper Pronoun Reference. This presentation will cover some background information on pronouns and antecedents, provide you with several examples and scenarios in which pronoun reference errors might occur, and serve as a great reminder to you to remember audience awareness while you are writing. My hope is that all of you will walk away from today's presentation with a greater understanding of how to properly reference pronouns to strengthen your sentences and further help you to produce successful academic writing. Let's begin today by covering a couple of quick definitions, starting with what is a pronoun. So defined, a pronoun is a word that takes place of and functions as a noun. A few you might be familiar with, especially if you've already taken English 101, are first, second, and third person pronouns. First person pronouns are commonly I or we, second person pronoun you, and third person he, it, she, and they. And so those are just a few examples to kind of get you started. But when we think about pronouns, we also must think about antecedents and how they agree. So pronouns are matched with antecedents. Antecedents are defined as the nouns that pronouns refer to. So an easy way to remember this is that antecedents function as the subject of your sentence. And when you refer back to the subject in that same sentence, you're going to be using a pronoun. Pronouns and antecedents must match and agree in number and person. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. So example 1 reads, the audience roared its loud applause as the band finished performing. The word audience is our subject or antecedent, and because the word audience functions as one unit, we use the pronoun its when referring to the audience's loud applause. The audience roared its loud applause. In example 2, which reads, motorcyclists must wear their helmets to prevent possible head injuries, motorcyclists is our subject or antecedent. And because the word motorcyclist is plural, we use the pronoun their when referring to the motorcyclist's helmets. Motorcyclists must wear their helmets. Problems begin to occur, though, when sentences contain more than one possible antecedent. And so it's important in this case that our subject is clearly defined as to which antecedent we are referring to. Our incorrect example reads, Johnson and Gomez both claimed that the experiments were truthful and well documented. However, he later confessed that the experiments weren't properly conducted. When we use the word he, it is confusing to our audience because our audience doesn't know whether Johnson or Gomez is being referred to. In the correct example, which reads, Johnson and Gomez both claimed that the experiments were truthful and well documented. However, Gomez later confessed that the experiments weren't properly conducted. Now our audience has that clearly defined subject, which is Gomez, knowing that Gomez later confessed the experiments weren't properly conducted. So it's important when we are referencing pronouns, going back and looking at those antecedents, that our audience has a clearly defined subject. Our audience needs that clarity in the sentences. There are a few other types of pronoun reference errors that may occur. We're going to start by talking about indefinite starters. These are statements that don't clearly define or easily hide a subject in our sentence. And remember, audience awareness is our #1 priority, so we want to make sure our audience has a clearly defined subject. They don't have to go searching or questioning anything. So a few examples of indefinite starters are there is, there are, it is, and this is. And we want to avoid these. Again, we want to remember that our audience needs that clarity. We don't want them to question anything. And so an example that we can look at here in this case is the incorrect example, which reads, it is said on the news that the COVID-19 pandemic is greatly impacting our economy. When we use the word it is said, our audience is left questioning who said this. So our correct example, which reads, Kentucky newscasters state that the COVID-19 pandemic is greatly impacting our economy, provides our readers with clarity that the Kentucky newscasters said this. So we know who and where this took place. And so that provides our audience with that clarity. But we want to make sure that we're providing our audience with that clarity the first time that initially from the get-go. And so always remember that when you're producing your sentences and creating your sentences. We also need to be careful of inattentive usage of the words this, that, it, and which, because when we use these to refer back to a subject or antecedent, it can get kind of confusing if we don't have that clearly defined subject for our audience. So scenario here for you, the incorrect use reads, a band can produce a melody and a harmony with blended sounds. A choir is also capable of doing so. It only utilizes voices, but is it referring to the band or the choir? So in the correct example, we'll find out. A band can produce a melody and harmony with blended sounds. A choir is also capable of doing so. The choir only utilizes voices. And so while the choir was at the end of that first sentence, we needed to still state that in the sentence following because we had 2 different antecedents in that first sentence. So while it seems redundant, we really needed to provide our audience with that clarity. Remember, that's our #1 priority. We also need to be careful in choosing to utilize who, that, or which in our sentences and using those properly. We're going to use who in cases of referencing living beings, people or animals. Quick example for you here. Louis Armstrong, who was a well-known jazz musician, sang many duets with Ella Fitzgerald. That example really speaks for itself. Really easy to understand. Just make sure you're utilizing who correctly. That and which are a little bit more complex. They're similarly used when referencing animals, items, and in some cases, unnamed or collaborative groups of people. However, we're going to choose to use that when it comes to restrictive clauses. Restrictive clauses is that information in your sentence that you cannot live without. It has to be there to accomplish the intent of that sentence. So our example here reads, program activities that appeal to most children include water, hands-on experiments, or technological opportunities. If we were to take out the portion that reads that appeal to most children, we would lose the intent of our sentence because our sentence is trying to tell our audience water, hands-on experiments, or technological opportunities are program activities that appeal to most children. We're going to choose which when it comes to non-restrictive clauses. That's the opposite. So that's information that we could pull out of our sentence and our sentence would stay true to its original intent. And so our example here reads, program activities which appeal to most children must be carefully planned and supervised. If we were to take out the portion that reads which appeal to most children, we would stay true to our sentence because our sentence is trying to explain to our audience that program activities must be carefully planned and supervised. So remember those restrictive and non-restrictive clauses when choosing that and which. The last item we're going to discuss today is direct address, which is defined as writing that directly speaks to your audience. I want you to think about that second person pronoun you. So oftentimes you is used in direct address. However, we're going to avoid utilizing that word you when generalizing or referencing individuals, events, or circumstances in our sentences. And so this is kind of what this looks like. That'll help you understand a little bit better. Our incorrect example here reads, disciplinary issues are more prevalent when you don't consistently enforce rules and procedures in the classroom. So to you out there listening, you're not responsible for consistently enforcing rules and procedures in the classroom. The reader isn't responsible in this case. So we must make sure that we are defining who is responsible in this case. Correct example, which reads, disciplinary issues are more prevalent when teachers don't consistently enforce rules and procedures in the classroom. The teachers are responsible in this case. This is a common error in writing, as this often happens in verbal speech and just easily translates over. So this is just one of those errors that we just really need to pay close attention to. As we conclude today, if you have any further questions on pronoun reference, strengthening your sentences, or audience awareness as a whole, please contact me. My name, email, phone number, and availability are listed on this slide. I thank you so much for listening today, and I hope that you have a blessed day.